Welcome back to Grade 7 History, Unit Number 2, Conflicts and Challenges in Canada, 1800 to 1850. This is Lesson Number 14, What Was Life Like in the Backwoods? Let's begin today's lesson by considering the following. Imagine you are a loyalist and that you have been assigned a piece of land that is in a remote, forested area. What challenges do you think you would face in trying to start a new life in the backwoods? So at this point, you're going to put the video on pause so that you can write down your response to this question, and we'll share our thoughts in tomorrow's class. All right, let's begin. When the Loyalists made their way into British North America, some were able to take jobs in already established towns. Most, however, settled in the backwoods and cleared land to start farms. Backwoods are remote, uncleared, forested land. The area that is today southeastern Ontario used to have many forests and towns, but few buildings or roads. Many Loyalists used boats to travel along the St. Lawrence River and wagons to reach their assigned pieces of land. I just want you to take a look at this illustration on the left and consider what challenges does the artist show the Loyalists facing during their migration. I'll put the video on pause for a moment because something we'll talk about in tomorrow's class. Loyalists settled mostly in Upper Canada and the Maritimes, and less so in Lower Canada. The first year was very challenging as they arrived in spring and had to build a log cabin before winter. A cabin was small enough to be heated by one fireplace. The family would sleep in the attic. Forested land had to be cleared in order to build farms and homes. There were no tractors or other equipment, so all work had to be done by hand and with hand tools like axes and animals such as oxen and mules. The logs that were cut down could be used to build cabins. After clearing the land of trees and large stones, the soil needed to be turned so that seeds could be planted. Every year, families would try to clear a little more land. Although most settlers farmed for a living, others found work in fishing and forestry. So here's another painting for you to look at and consider what evidence can you see of the labor that was done prior to the land being ready for planting. And this we will talk about in tomorrow's class. At the start of the 1800s, a settler woman's main responsibility was working in the home. A woman had to raise the children, sew, knit, clean, wash clothes with a washboard, iron, and cook over a fireplace or wood stove. Women spun wool, made candles and soap, and planted vegetables in the gardens. A man would also give his wife the responsibility of handling the family finances. Few women found work outside the home as teachers, nuns, innkeepers, dressmakers, or as domestic servants. Yeah, another illustration for you to look at. What challenges or dangers do you see this woman facing when making soap from boiling lye? Children were also expected to pitch in and help around the home. Most settler families had 7 or 8 children, all of whom learned to perform several chores each day. Children would carry in wood for the stove or fire, peel potatoes, churn butter, fetch water, and gather eggs. They also helped collect the harvest in the fall. Since they were needed to help on the farm, few children went to school. Also, there were no public schools, and private schools were far too expensive for farm families. Some children were taught how to read and write by their parents. When possible, settlers tried to live close together so that they could help each other to survive. Their hope was to build a mill, a general store, a church, and eventually a school for the entire community. Public schools were first introduced in 1807. The British government's planning of towns made it difficult to create connected communities. Government-controlled land stood in the way of settlers being able to build roads that could connect them to other villages and each other. And just look at this diagram here. So you can see that the land was divided in a pretty organized fashion, and different boxes which are shaded in were either crown lands, land that was controlled by government, or clergy lots, so land that was set aside for the church. The British government kept crown reserves, land which it sold in order to make money. Clergy reserves or lands set aside to build Protestant churches in Upper Canada. Other land was reserved for other uses, such as providing timber to the British Royal Navy. Farmers like Robert Gourlay complained about these lands not being used in a way that would help build and connect communities, but the government was not willing to listen. And just a little insight on Robert Gourlay. He was a Scottish farmer who settled in Upper Canada and wrote a guide to help other immigrant farmers. He was banished by the government of Upper Canada in 1819 for encouraging rebellion. His banishment ended 20 years later in 1839, but he is considered so important in the history of Upper Canada that he actually had a bronze statue made in his honor. Social events in communities were rare. One event that allowed early settlers to socialize and accomplish a large task at the same time was a working bee. Working bees were held for building barns, shearing sheep, picking apples, and clearing land. 20 men with a team of oxen could clear about 2 hectares, or football fields, of land in one day. Women would bake, cook, and clean for 2 to 3 days, preparing for the celebratory meal and party after the working bee. Many settlers chose to live in the areas where their extended families were living. They also looked for areas with people who spoke the same language, held the same faith, or served in the same military regiment. Those who made the requests before receiving their assigned land often got to choose their neighbors. It was difficult for those who waited, as well as for black loyalists. Black loyalists found that their land grants were spread across Upper Canada, keeping them from forming tight-knit communities. Some black loyalists petitioned the government to create a separate settlement for black people. And we'll be talking at different points in the near future about Richard Pierpoint, a black loyalist. My question for you is, why do you think that black loyalists like Mr. Pierpoint asked for a black settlement that was separate from other settlers? I want to put the video on pause and jot down your thoughts on this question because we'll definitely talk about it tomorrow. For many Loyalists, moving to Canada was a step backwards. They left their homes, their friends, and easier lifestyle. For others, it was a step forward. Government land grants and assistance was very attractive to many settlers. To survive in the backwoods meant that everyone, no matter their social class, had to work together to survive. Loyalists, who used to be from the upper class, learned to treat those who were less fortunate as equals. And let's conclude this video by considering the following. Number one, if you were a loyalist, would you prefer to live in a town or build a farm in the backwoods? And why did you choose your position? Number two, how do you think the actions of early settlers shaped the community that you live in today? So, as always, you're going to put the video on pause to write down your responses to these two questions. If you don't feel prepared to answer either of these, it means you need to go back, watch the video at least a couple of more times, and then when you're ready, put the video on pause. So we have a number of follow-up questions from this video, which I look forward to discussing with all of you in tomorrow's class. But until then, this concludes today's video.